revisiting my dreams with the king.
Episode of the Revisit Your Dreams podcast. I am your host, Johnny King III, aka Still Chill Leroy, and this is The Ride. What we do here at The Ride is we encourage, we motivate, we inspire, and we tell real life stories of trial, error, and success, and we even provide a few laughs along the way. I have a very special guest in-house online with me tonight. This is a friend of mine. We go kind of way back from Vallejo, California. I'm going to introduce him to you shortly, but I want to remind you, our episodes air Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the Revisit Your Dreams channel. Please subscribe, like, and share. I know some nuggets will be dropped today that someone you know or even you will get something out of. Let's go ahead and get started. Today's episode is titled From Juvenile Hall to City Hall, Your Resume Can Change. I have a very multi-talented and multifaceted individual to introduce to you today. My very special guest is a fellow native of Vallejo, California. He's a community activist and as such currently serves as the re-elected city supervisor for District 10 in the city of San Francisco. Prior to that election, he served as president of the San Francisco Board of Education and followed up that leadership role, eventually serving as president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors from 2021 to 2023. Is the author of a life-changing book, and we named this episode after that book. In addition to impacting lives through policy, he also impacts lives on stage as a comedian, and his new podcast, Shamann Walton's 100% Real podcast, recently aired its first episode on YouTube. He's a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, an equally proud graduate of Morris Brown College and San Francisco State University, where he earned his master's degree in public administration. He's a fellow graduate of Vallejo Senior High School, a fellow baseball teammate, and outside of his professional career, he's just one of the homies doing good for the hood. Welcome to the show, my friend, Shamann Walton.
Thank you so much for having me, man. Appreciate having an opportunity to come on here and share with you, man, and just want you to know I love to see what you're doing as well. So thank you for this humbling opportunity.
Man, thank you very much. I appreciate that as well, and I appreciate you being here. Let's just go ahead and get into it, Shamann. I like to start off each episode by letting the audience know how I know each guest and how, the relationship that I have with each guest. Each guest that I'm interviewing is somebody that I know personally. I've had some kind of relationships with them in the past, either worked with them, went to school with them, college or high school, and done business with them in some capacity. I already mentioned some of the ways, mainly Shamann. We went to high school together. I think he may be a year older, but we played on the same JV baseball team, so we know each other from that arena and have some mutual friends. And then I've just kind of followed and watched his career over the years as he's grown in his political presence. And then we do have some mutual connections in Dr. Fillmore Graham, which we'll discuss later on in the episode. Shamann, do you have any feedback on that?
No, I just, again, we grew up together in Vallejo, and I think it's important to be able to bring on folks that you do have a relationship with and talk about some of the things that you can connect together from history. And so, like I said, it's a privilege to be on here. I appreciate the opportunity, and again, just watching, seeing what you've been able to do over the years. I think that we can get a lot of people to say we got some folks that come from where we come from that have done good, and I think that's important to highlight that for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, this very first question that I'm going to ask you is going to promote you or prompt you to highlight that even more. Question one, it's a 100% Vallejo question. Vallejo,
okay,
also known as the itty bitty city by the water. It's kind of famous for that as far as we know. With so many talented individuals who have come from our city in sports, in entertainment, and even activism like yourself, what is it about Vallejo do you think that creates this kind of ongoing phenomenon that with so many kind of standouts that come out of our city?
I think it's like a lot of resiliency with the folks that come from Vallejo. Like, I think we understand growing up in Vallejo that we are in a smaller part of a bigger part of Northern California, which is called the Bay Area. So I think folks from the V have a resiliency, like, yeah, we may be from the small city, but we're going to make an impact too. And we influenced obviously by what happens in San Francisco, what happens in Oakland and other cities of the Bay that may be a little bit bigger. And so that resiliency, that chip on our shoulder, it comes from that. And folks from the V always want to make sure that people know that it's a small but mighty city. And to your point, we have so many folks that come out of Vallejo that are world renowned, that people know, and they don't understand that we had the privilege and opportunity of seeing them folks grow up and seeing them folks make it. Mm-hmm. Folks like E40, folks like CC Sabathia, folks like CJ Anderson, who I just had on my second episode of the podcast, folks like Bobby Brooks. I mean, I can name several dozen folks. And, you know, the list goes on, but people don't really understand that the reason why we have so many folks that put it down coming from Vallejo is that resiliency, but also that exposure that we get from being a smaller part of a bigger area that everybody loves.
Man, that's a great explanation. I've asked this question to many people that I've interviewed already from Vallejo, and that answer, that response is a kind of a unique one, but it's right on. You know, I feel like you hit the nail on the head when it talks about, you know, us Vallejo having a kind of a chip on its shoulder, being a smaller city in the Bay Area, you know, still having to kind of compete for whatever notoriety, whatever attention, whatever fan base, whatever, you know, if, you know, our artists and our, you know, entertainers had to compete with other bigger artists from LA and from Oakland and other bigger cities. And so if it requires, you know, an extra level of effort and some extra uniqueness. And I think that's why, you know, like you said, some of the people from our city, that resilience allows us to be able to rise out of those competitive circumstances.
And having you know, we got our own swag, we got our own game, but at the end of the day, you know, it's a culmination of what we do in Vallejo, and it rubs off also to other areas of the Bay Area too. You know, folks use some of the same slang and some of the same swag that we have in Vallejo. It is carried across the Bay and across the world, quite frankly. And so it's exciting to you know, to be from and grow up in Vallejo. I mean, when I first moved to Vallejo, I didn't really know and realize how much swag Vallejo had, and you know how much of a stamp Vallejo will put not only on the Bay Area but on the world. And so it's a place where you got to be from here to understand and to know it, but most certainly it touches the world.
Yeah. I took Vallejo with me when I came to TSU. I know Vallejo was already at TSU because of, you know, Fillmore Graham and Montoya, but I took it with me too, man. And I know you did when you went down south too. You wrote and released a book a couple of years ago by the title that's shared. You know, we shared that title, the name of this episode, From Juvenile Hall to City Hall, Your Resume Can Change. We obviously want viewers to go buy your book, but share with us the inspiration behind writing this book and what can readers expect out of it.
Well, I really wanted young people to know that the mistakes you may make in life or the things that you did at a young age do not have to determine what your future looks like. You know, for me, growing up, to your point, in Vallejo, and really making some mistakes at a young age, which really taught me some lessons, but being incarcerated as a teenager, a good part of my teenage life, taught me some lessons that made me understand, one, that without exposure, without mentorship, without a praying mom, without certain opportunities in life, I could have been, you know, stuck and either dead or in jail. But because I had a certain level of exposure, because I had mentorship, and because I had a mom who prayed hard for me and also made some sacrificial decisions for me to be able to be successful, we were able to overcome that. But I want young people to know and understand that if you make some mistakes when you're young and you have to learn some lessons, that does not have to be where you stay, and most certainly does not have to determine the outcome of where you end up in life. And so I wanted people to know that I grew up a certain way, was able and blessed to have certain opportunities, and being incarcerated at a young age and ended up going to become the president of the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, I think is a story that can resonate with a lot of young people, and a lot of young people who have similar circumstances or who have been in the same places and spaces that I have been as a young person. They should know that you can learn from your mistakes and grow past them and become really whatever you want to be. just don't let those mistakes hold you back.
Yeah, and don't let them define you. And it sounds like your book is a autobiography, so to speak, as well as a motivating factor, inspiration. A note of inspiration to the young world, right? Of there's redemption available for those who make mistakes, and there's also a path to greatness when you learn from those ahead of you who's made those mistakes before you, so you don't make those same mistakes.
Yeah, and that's the thing I don't want a young person to keep bumping their head and go through similar mistakes like I did, right? I think that if some people get an opportunity to read on people who may have similar backgrounds and similar circumstances, but they can start themselves to make a different decision because somebody gave them the information beforehand. And at the end of the day, some of the things that I did as a young person only leads to incarceration, only leads to death, or only leads to putting yourself in a position to where you won't be able to be or achieve the goals and dreams that you start out with as a young person. And I think everybody can overcome that and have that opportunity. And so I'd rather a young person read about mistakes versus make some of those mistakes. And I know I bumped my head a lot, and fortunately, looking at some of the examples that I didn't see at an early age, which made me change my life, was very important for me. And I think that we allow through this book some of these young folks to see that opportunity as well.
And that's very powerful. I appreciate you writing that book, and I'm sure that some lives will be changed as a result of it. It takes I don't know if you heard that, but it's starting to storm out here. We're gonna keep it going. Hopefully, it doesn't interrupt too much. But if you guys are watching and listening, you might hear some lightning and thunder. I don't know if I can blank that out or edit that out. But it sounds like for the book. That is a very powerful device and a very powerful tool to help change a young person's life. And, I appreciate you writing it. I'm sure there'll be people who will read that and some lives will be changed as a result. Early in your career with the city of San Francisco, you helped introduce legislation to close the youth detention center in the city. And during the protests against the murder of George Floyd, you introduced a resolution to ban the San Francisco Police Department and the Sheriff's Department from hiring officers with a history of serious misconduct. Later that same year, you also introduced the CAREN Act, which would make fraudulent emergency telephone calls motivated by racism illegal. What has been the outcome of your efforts in these areas?
Well, first of all, early after being elected to the Board of Supervisors, two of my colleagues and I presented legislation to close juvenile hall here in San Francisco. And people thought we were crazy. But I think what people didn't understand, there was a series of things that were happening during that time period back in 2019. First, juvenile crime was way down. It was very low, not just here in San Francisco, but quite frankly, across the state of California. Two, the amount of money that was spent every year to incarcerate a young person was ridiculous, to the tune of $200,000+ to incarcerate a young person. Three, the outcomes for locking someone up in juvenile hall, particularly here in San Francisco, did not end up being something that was redemptive, but more fed the juvenile hall to prison pipeline. Mm-hmm. And it was, as someone who has worked with young people, obviously I grew up in Solano County and was incarcerated mainly in Solano County and did a stint in Contra Costa County. But what was crazy was when I would go back to talk in juvenile hall here in the city or to Log Cabin Ranch, which was one of our youth placements for folks who might be incarcerated for extended time, things were the same just like when I was in juvenile hall in Solano County and Contra Costa County. Sleeping on a concrete slab, in school with one educator, and that one educator had to teach all subjects to various different ages and grades, couldn't talk while you were eating, having to walk in a straight line. And all of those things are similar to what happens when you go to the county jail, to what happens when you go to the penitentiary. And so what we did and what we wanted to do with the closure of juvenile hall was come up with an alternative placement that will provide young people an opportunity to be successful if they made a mistake in life. So it wasn't like we're saying someone commits a crime, they get arrested, and then they just go scot-free. We're saying the place that they go needs to be a place that focuses on rehabilitation, that provides them with skills and opportunity to make effective changes so that when they come out of that situation, they come out wanting to make better decisions versus coming out ready to be going to the county jail or to the penitentiary. And so we put the legislation together. We put together a group of members from various backgrounds, former folks who were incarcerated, professionals who work with young people, to try to design something, a facility that would be able to address making sure that young people, when they make a mistake, have a different opportunity. And the committee came up with some recommendations, but the problem was the courts also had to be involved. And when we wrote the legislation, we also wanted the presiding judge over juvenile court to be involved. And they never got involved and were never a part of the work. And so without getting the courts on board to agree with an alternative placement, there was no way we were going to be successful. And so we did not completely shut down juvenile hall by the target date. But most certainly there was some things that did change with how we incarcerate young people, the things that we provide when young people are in our juvenile justice facility here in San Francisco. And it's still much work to do. But I mean, we had young people being incarcerated just because they may have a bad situation at home, or there may be somebody who continues to run away. Like, we were trying to find a better way to address some of these concerns for young people, rather than preparing them for a life of incarceration.
Yeah.
And to your point, after the tragedy with George Floyd, I got together with the district attorney at the time, and we put a resolution in place that said the city and county of San Francisco shall and can no longer hire former members of law enforcement from other cities that had histories of misconduct, histories of racial profiling and bias, because particularly at that time, we have folks who may make a mistake, commit a crime, or do something wrong in one law enforcement entity, and then be able to easily get a job in another one. And those types of folks you don't want, obviously, working in your police force or your sheriff's department, or really doing anything that provides them with the opportunity to be biased to any individuals. And so we fought to make sure that that is a policy and a practice of our law enforcement agencies here in San Francisco. And the CAREN Act, which is Caution Against Racially Exploitative Non-Emergencies, was really put in place because it's always been a trend. We can go back to when Emmett Till was falsely accused by a white woman for whistling at him, and he was lynched and killed because of a false report. And what people don't realize is when you weaponize the police force with false reports, it can turn into some very dangerous and serious outcomes, particularly for black people and black males, which can lead to, as we have seen in the case of Emmett Till, death. A lot of people were making false accusations and false phone calls to police department saying that people were committing crimes when they actually weren't. We can go about the case where a gentleman was bird watching in Central Park, and the lady called the police, yelling and screaming and saying that this person was harming her, and clearly on video that was not the case. There was somebody who wrote Black Lives Matter on their own home out here in San Francisco, and a white couple came up to them and called the police and told them that they were trespassed and couldn't be in front of that specific house. And we saw the young man who a cell phone was stolen from a lady, and it was later proved that it wasn't him. But these folks are making these phone calls. A young girl was selling lemonade outside of her aunt's home, and somebody called the police on her. And one of the famous ones, of course, is the folks barbecuing at Lake Berryessa in Oakland. So people were calling the police on black folks for just living their everyday lives, and really their intent was to weaponize the police department. I mean, if you look at that case where the woman was in Central Park, she literally was saying this guy was attacking her. And when you make a phone call like that, what is the police response going to be? They're going to come in looking for somebody who has attacked somebody. And so the CAREN Act provides civil opportunity for folks to be fined if they make a phone call that we find out to be false, that and particularly on someone of a protected class, because we want to make sure that there was a consequence. So the fine could be up to $1,000, but most certainly it gives a person opportunity also to be able to say if they need to go to court that they can get increased penalties. But this is, it was a phenomenon that happened then and it continues to happen. But we like to think that the CAREN Act has played a role in awareness and keeping people from making those misguided phone calls.
Absolutely. Do you feel you mentioned that the incident in New York, Central Park. You also mentioned several incidents that happened, in the Bay Area. Do you feel that your efforts for the CAREN Act have expanded nationally, where it's affecting things on a national level, or is it just kind of locally in San Francisco and the Bay Area?
Well, at the time that I passed the CAREN Act here in San Francisco, one of our state assembly members, who's now the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta, he also passed something similar at the state, except with his, it had a civil and a criminal penalty for folks who made these phone calls for folks who were just going about their regular business. So it did spark fire in the state and, of course, in other cities across the state. In fact, even across the country, people would call and learn about what we had, what laws we had on the books and what we did. I'm not aware of anybody actually putting something into law like we did in California, like we did in San Francisco. But much like any time we see some success in affecting change, whether it be law enforcement, police reform, that gets attacked and the narrative gets attacked. And so what you see now is a whole bunch of folks going back to this mantra of law enforcement being the main way to keep people safe, and really just trying to undo the work that we were able to do as a result of really seeing what happened with the murder of George Floyd right there in the street in front of everybody in Minnesota. So we had some successes because of the reform and the change that people focus on, but there's now a new narrative that people are trying to make everything about safety so they can continue to bring more police into departments across the country. And it's same thing here in San Francisco.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's an ongoing effort, because that also further exacerbates the fight to make sure you're not bringing on law enforcement that you don't want in your city. That kind of thing. If they're trying to push the agenda to bring more law enforcement on, well, you got to filter the bad ones out a little more than you have been.
And there's a lot of things that are involved to make sure that people are safe, and obviously law enforcement is one component of that, but opportunity, jobs, making sure folks have equitable opportunities in life. The more opportunities you have, the more knowledge, the more information you have, the less likely you are to make mistakes or to commit a crime. And so it's very important to address the core issues that lead to folks making mistakes that even have them interacting with law enforcement.
Yeah, I see you active on social media, standing on the steps of City Hall, or, in different locations around the city, at the podium, speaking to the community, speaking to your constituents, and things like that, about these different topics that you're talking about right now. So that, your activism is real. And I applaud you for it, especially coming from where we come from and coming from your background. I applaud you for your efforts. It takes a strong leader to address those type of things with the diligence that you've been addressing them in a city as large as San Francisco, with all the eyeballs on the nation, on California and the Bay Area. So, man, I commend you for that.
Thank you. And I feel fortunate to have that opportunity.
Yeah, you should, man. We're gonna get into some lighter things in just a minute, but I got one more question for you in this area. In 2020, you were very active in the political space. We just talked about a few things a moment ago. However, in February of that year, of 2020, you put forth a resolution for the city's African American population. how did you embark on this movement, and what gave you the boldness in today's political environment to organize in that direction? And I was talking about reparations for the African American population.
Well, again, as we know, if we look at history, there have been a lot of attempts to get reparations for folks here, descendants of slaves across this country. And so what we did here in San Francisco was say, look, I can play a role as a lawmaker and putting a committee together to come up with recommendations to achieve reparations for folks here in San Francisco. A lot of folks will say, well, why would you need reparations in San Francisco? These folks weren't, we didn't have slave owners in San Francisco. And there's a lot of things that people don't understand. One, white people in general benefited from slavery, whether it was transfer of property that they may have had the opportunity to have, the wealth that they were able to generate. But there are a lot of policies also here in San Francisco that negatively affected black folks, and it was because there was a systemic and systematic way to keep black folks from being successful right here in San Francisco, to keep them from being able to build generational wealth, to keep them from being able to provide for their family. And so we wanted to make sure that we put something in place that looked at what those injustices were. Redlining here in San Francisco. The fact that people don't know, but there was a point in time where individuals that looked like you and me had to pay for the school system in the school district, but didn't have representation here in San Francisco. And again, the fact that we have folks most certainly who migrated from all over the place that were negatively affected from the impacts of slavery, which still affect us here in San Francisco today. We have the biggest wealth gaps here in San Francisco between the black population and everybody else, the biggest gaps in achievement in terms of education, the lowest home ownership, every bad category, you name it. Black people are either the highest or most certainly at the top of the list for the negative outcomes in those areas. So the task force was put together by folks who may have either been gentrified out of San Francisco, who have suffered from injustices here in San Francisco, and they came up with about 111 recommendations on how to achieve reparations for black people here in San Francisco. Categories were around home ownership, around education, around workforce development, around health outcomes, and of course around ways to address the disparities and the push of more black folks in the criminal justice system here in San Francisco. And one of the biggest recommendations that came out was to give each person who qualified for reparations $5 million apiece, which was where the news and the media went crazy because they only focused on the cash part of the recommendations. But the reality of it was there were so many other recommendations that will work to help folks achieve some true form of reparations here in San Francisco, particularly around education and home ownership and some of the health outcomes, some of the health strategies to really make sure that the negative health disparities that exist in the black population didn't continue. Right now, we have those recommendations. I do have legislation that I want to introduce that will provide some form of resources to address some of those. But the reality of it is we don't have the resources to address all of the recommendations to achieve true reparations. But our particular fight for reparations were for descendants of slaves here in San Francisco that have suffered injustices, to make sure that San Francisco plays its role in addressing reparations for black San Franciscans.
That is again another commendable, stance to take, very prominent stance to take for African American community all across the country, let alone just in San Francisco, for someone like yourself, who looks like us, to stand up and say, in a city that's so diverse in San Francisco, in a city that is so large and in the public eye, for you to be spearheading, a movement to bring reparations to African American citizens of San Francisco, regardless of the outcome of that. We as African Americans all understand kind of what that means for us, what reparations might mean. But it also comes in different facets, like you said: home ownership, education, healthcare, not just straight cash hand to hand. And so to be able to fight for those things and to stand up on a soapbox in the city of San Francisco as a black man to say, I want to fight for this for my people, is very, very, very commendable. And I mean, I think there's a lot of people around the country that does not know that you, Shamann Walton, as a black man, is leading the charge on such conversations. San Francisco and California gets looked at from the around the nation as kind of, at least the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, San Francisco area, as kind of leaders in a lot of areas. And so that's very powerful, man. I'm proud of you for that, and I hope that something comes out of that. Whether it comes out of the the coffers of San Francisco, or it comes out of the coffers of the U.S. federal government, or some state, some city, some county takes on the mantle that you took on, and brings it into action in that area. I just appreciate you spearheading that.
Thank you, and we're gonna keep. We're not gonna stop fighting for reparations. I mean, all those hundreds of years of free labor, this country's economic vitality and economic power was built on the backs of that free labor, and so they definitely owe the descendants of slaves some reparations, and we're gonna keep fighting for that, regardless of anybody who disagrees with that.
I know that's music to a lot of people's ears, especially people that look like us, especially people that are older than us, that are still living, that have dealt with a little bit more than you and I have. That's
Right.
that's music to their ears. So I know when my dad hears this and sees this, I know it's gonna make him smile. Like, man, it's got one of us up there standing there fighting for that. I appreciate that. But let's switch gears for a minute, Shamann. Get into some lighter stuff, man. Talk to us about Top Notch. How did you find yourself in the comedic space, and where does the name come from? I got a couple more questions after that, but how did you find yourself there, and where does that name come from?
I mean, really. So one, I got the name Top Notch from my process to join the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So that's the name that I got from the members who came before me in the organization. And that's the best I can put it in what I can talk about on here. But I will say, so that's how that came about. But I started doing comedy. It's funny, to your point, Johnny. Like, I wrote my book From Juvenile Hall to City Hall, Your Resume Can Change. And I was doing several different book signings across the Bay Area and even across the country. And I have a friend who was doing comedy and putting together comedy shows. And so he was like, we should do a comedy show and book signing together. And I have an uncle who I've been really trying to get to do comedy like for years. I could never get him to do it. I wanted him to do it. So I told him about the idea that my folks had. Let's do the comedy show and the book signing. And my uncle said, well, I'll do it if you do it. And so that was our first time we did the comedy show and the book signing. And from that comedy show, got invited to a lot of other opportunities to do comedy. So I've done Tommy T's like 3 times, got invited to Alaska. I'm doing the Comedy Store next month in Los Angeles. And we've done several shows just across the Bay Area. And I'm having a good time. It's something that I'm obviously learning every day, but we've been putting it down. We've been doing shows and trying to get better and better. And just love doing it.
Yeah, man. What is your most memorable stand-up moment? And since you've been doing it, what's your most memorable moment?
I'm gonna say I got invited by one of my frat brothers who was doing a comedy show with Michael Bonner, who did Def Comedy Jam up in Alaska. And I had the opportunity to go to Alaska and perform. And the reason why I say it's my most memorable up to this point, it was the first time where I had a complete audience of folks who didn't know me and wasn't necessarily coming there to support a show that I was on. They were coming obviously to see me and other comedians, but they didn't know who I was from Adam.
Hmm.
And we got up there, and I think we did a good job. We didn't get booed out of the room, and I had a great time. Plus, I had a chance to learn from Michael Bonner and some other seasoned comedians, and it was away from my comfort zone and put me in a place and space to where say maybe I can do this because I have people who never heard me before that enjoyed what we had to say.
Yeah.
And I won't forget that experience. And plus, it was it's Alaska, man. It's in the middle of winter,
Yeah.
and to walk out of there and get some laughs and make people walk out of there and say they enjoyed themselves. That's memorable for sure.
Absolutely. For you to get an opportunity in a newer venture, for you to be able to go to Alaska and perform, and get that experience and that exposure. And like you said, there's not people in the room who know you, so you get to get a true sense of what you do, how well you do, how people take you, which is kind of dope.
That's
What do you say to those who criticize you for pursuing ventures such as comedy, which are outside of your role and responsibility as a member of local government?
Well, what I typically say to them, I don't want to say it on your podcast, uh, but I'll say this: people have their visions and expectations of what somebody should be, right? So there are people who are out there that think when they hear you are a member of the Board of Supervisors that you should be one dimensional and you should not have a life or focus on opportunities outside of that role. But my thing is, one, I know what my job is. I know the people I represent. I spend so much time with my community, in my community. And quite frankly, the majority of people who I spend time around, the majority of my constituents actually have encouraged what I am doing and have given me support. But the folks who have issues, I just say, don't let your limitations on your own life be something that I should have to take on for mine. And I'm going to do my job well as a member of the Board of Supervisors, but I'm also going to focus on enjoying life as a grandparent, as a father, and somebody who's been in community for a long time.
Man, don't let the limitations on your own life don't put those in front of somebody else to try to use them as stumbling blocks for somebody else. That's powerful. I appreciate that, Shamann. That response. Remind you as in the audience, like, do what you're called to do. Do what you're blessed to do. Do what you're talented and gifted to do. And it doesn't have to be one thing. You can be multi-talented, multifaceted. You can be excellent in all of them. You can be better at some than others. But there's nothing wrong with expressing the whole you, even if you're in a space, like yourself, Shamann, in a political
And
space.
most people put limitations on you because of their own belief system about what you are able to do and achieve in life, which is problematic.
Yeah,
But we continue to do the work and keep putting in the time. And like I said, we would not have been one elected twice, two given the opportunity to serve as the president of this Board of Supervisors if we weren't doing our job.
absolutely, absolutely, and be able to, like you say, stand up for the things that you stood up for, and get the support from your peers if you weren't doing the right things. So that's amazing. Um, you also recently released the first episode of your new podcast, Shamann Walton's 100% Real Podcast. What inspired this venture, and what's the content nature of the show?
I think what inspired me to do the podcast was really, I know that I have a platform and opportunity to bring on folks and bring folks together that resonate with larger audiences. And so the focus of my podcast is on sports, music, politics, and community. And the fact that I know a lot of artists, I know a lot of professional sports players or folks who just have thrived in the sports world. I know a lot of elected officials and obviously a plethora of folks who've done some great things in the community. I think that their stories and the things that they've done are something that will resonate with larger audiences. And so having the opportunity to know certain people and be able to have a conversation with them so that the rest of the world can hear, I think would be valuable, particularly for not just for young folks, but most certainly for folks who are trying to figure out what they want to do in their careers, are trying to maybe make change in life, are trying to learn about the music business, about professional sports, about politics and elected life. I think the stories of the folks that we have an opportunity to connect with and bring on the podcast will resonate with so many. And so I felt that, one, if I'm going to do something, it has to be authentic, it has to be real, and that's why we got the name 100% Real Podcast. The first episode is currently on YouTube right now with Black C from the legendary RBL Posse, right out of San Francisco. My second episode is with CJ Anderson, as you know, homegrown from Vallejo, California, Super Bowl winner, Pro Bowler, and someone who I've known pretty much all of his life. And I know that his story is going to resonate with folks who want to be professional athletes. So having both of them on, they have a story that will most certainly let people know that if these are the fields and the careers you want to go into, these are some of the things that you're going to expect. And I think people are going to learn a lot from not just those two guests, but really from what the vision we have for the podcast. And so I'm just excited to be able to do it. And I also learned a lot researching these folks. And probably much like yourself, just gives me an opportunity to display what they have to offer to the world and kind of be a vessel of making a connection if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm up in the same vein, in doing this Revisit Your Dreams podcast is exactly kind of the same vein of, using the connections and the resources that I have with the and relationships that I have with individuals who have a story, who have a journey, who are or are in the middle of their journey and can provide some encouragement or some motivation or some inspiration to someone, or can just educate someone about something significant that has happened. The only way that people will know that there's a black man in San Francisco, not the only way, one of the ways that people will know that there's a black man in San Francisco who is the president of Board of Supervisors, who put forth these efforts for the CAREN Act and reparations and things like that, is podcasts like these, is podcasts like your very own. And I appreciate you, using your platform, even though you're in the political space, you're able to separate who you are as a government official to who you are as an individual and still say, I'm a humanitarian, I'm a human being, I love people, and people need people to be 100% real. And so I think the name of your podcast is aptly titled, and I'm looking forward to watching more episodes. I did watch Black Seas. Have you released the CJ Anderson one yet?
No, I'll probably wait. My goal right now is every other month, and I got some other great guests lined up. So it's gonna be it's gonna be pretty special. But right now I'm looking at releasing new episodes every other month, and then I'm actually turned out of office January 2027, and then I may get more frequent at that point.
And just piggyback off of that, you mentioned you were termed out of office in January. Would you have to? Are you considering going through a re-election process or running for another position?
So I'm termed out. Here in San Francisco, you have opportunity for 2 4-year consecutive terms on the Board of Supervisors, and so I've been elected twice, and my term ends January 2027. Excited about this last year and a half and all the work that we still have to accomplish, but I think I am done with elected life. Most certainly going to continue to serve my community and participate in roles that'll give me that opportunity. But like I tell people, there are so many different ways to affect change outside of just being an elected official. I think there are some constraints that being an elected official can put on you in terms of the work that you really want to do. And obviously there are so many great opportunities in my role, but at the same time, I think I want to do something that gives me a little bit more flexibility as I move forward, and taking the knowledge that I've learned, obviously, of being a policymaker, a lawmaker, and taking that to the next level and in terms of what's next in community.
Well, you definitely paid your dues in this area. You provided your service to your community, your service to the state of California, your service to the federal government, to law, to policy. And I'm sure that the people that have worked for you and worked with you Even though you still got a year and a half left, they will continue to be, honored to work by your side. But I send, just following through social media, it seems that like the people in the communities that you serve are very happy to have you as a representative. So I'm sure you'll be well missed in the city of San Francisco when you finally step away.
Yeah, no, it's humbling, and I do get the opportunity to spend a lot of time in the various communities in my district and across the city, and doing work with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. Most certainly gives you the opportunity to spend time with folks, and when you accomplish some things together, people appreciate that.
Yeah.
So definitely, folks will miss the work, but like I tell everybody, there's a whole bunch of work that we'll be able to continue to do, just in a different capacity.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. You and I share a distinct affinity for a prominent figure from our hometown of Vallejo. While my connection to him is a little different than yours, it may not compare to your relationship with him. We have undoubtedly both been impacted and inspired by his influence. I'm a proud graduate of Tennessee State University, and because of Dr. Fillmore Graham, and his son Montoya, who also graduated from state, they're the reason why I went there. Talk to us about Fillmore Graham, who he is to you, and the impact that he had on you and so many youth in North Vallejo.
Well, one, just I would say not just North Vallejo, obviously the entire city of Vallejo, but Fillmore Graham was more than just a mentor to me. He really truly was a surrogate father. The reason why I am in the position that I am today, most certainly, is because of the opportunities and exposure provided by Fillmore Graham. I got a picture of him on my wall that you can't see, but he goes everywhere I go. I have an entire chapter in my book dedicated to Fillmore Graham. And I mean, I've definitely had opportunity to have mentors and spend time around people who paved the way, but nobody like Fillmore Graham. He was somebody who can walk in any room and his presence would be felt. He's not someone who grew up in the streets and the way that I did or had some of those type of experiences, but most certainly he's someone who could talk to anyone from the streets or from any walk of life and be able to challenge them. I talk about it in my book, but when my first interaction with him, I was doing something in the Boys and Girls Club, getting in trouble, and he immediately, not only did he obviously correct me, but he gave me a task to test my intelligence. And that's the type of person he was. He was always focused on trying to bring out the best in you and seeing how he could do that and what you would accomplish from some of the things he did. But when I talk about him saving my life, it's really true. One of the biggest turning points in my life was I had an opportunity to go to a youth leadership conference in Atlanta, Georgia in 1992. And what people need to know is I had just gotten out of juvenile hall about 2 weeks prior to that trip. And a lot of other adults told Pops, that's what I call Fillmore Graham, call him Pops or PG. A lot of people told him not to take me on that trip. There was no reason for me to go. Let's use that ticket for somebody else so that they could have opportunity, because I was beyond being able to be salvaged in terms of the direction I was headed in my life. He didn't take that advice. He took me to that youth leadership conference. And when I say, Johnny, that changed my life, I mean, I saw so many young black men that looked like me, that looked like us, that were thriving, having a good time, enjoying themselves. And it looked like they just ran the city. And my question to all of them was like, how did you get to this point to where you can live like this? And everyone's answer was education. And, Pops had always talked about going to black schools. He had always told us about what it looked like. I had mentors, but they all wore suits and, were 20 plus years older than me. I didn't see folks that literally were 2-3 years older than me living like that. Mm. And seeing how people cared about each other in that environment, knowing how everybody wanted to see you succeed in that environment, it just changed my life. And from that point on, I went back home and my focus was to get to an HBCU. And, fortunately, I always had a certain level of scholastic aptitude, even though I I chose to live a certain way. But we were able to turn some things around with, obviously with some pop support and my mom who knew that she couldn't raise me to be a man and allowed someone like Fillmore Graham to spend time with me. But yeah, that guy, I mean, I owe everything in terms of opportunity to him because he never gave up on me. No matter when I was at my worst, he always supported me and pushed me and knew what the potential was that I had. But obviously, he understood that just a little bit more time, just a little bit more push. And yeah, he helped hundreds of young men and young women, quite frankly, exposed them to higher education. I mean, his goal in starting the Boys Club in 1966 was really to be a father figure to young men, and started with 6 boys. It grew into, of course, thousands of folks who were members of the club, and hundreds going on to higher education, like you and I, going to historically black colleges and universities, or just going to college in general, because he pushed academics.
Yeah.
And that was the main thing. He wanted everybody to understand that you had an opportunity to go get a higher education, and obviously you could get educated by people that look like you.
Yeah, man, he definitely did. And rest his soul, man. Dr. Fillmore Graham was an amazing human being, and like you said, he impacted so many people. For him to take a chance on you, and knowing you, I wouldn't call it a chance, but based on your story, most people would look at it like, man, he took a chance. And it turned out to be phenomenal because of the impacts that you have gone on to make as a result of his decision back then to say, I'm not going to give up on this young man. I'm going to give him an opportunity to see life in a different capacity. Maybe that might be the thing that he needs to change, and it indeed was based on your story. I appreciate that response because I also, I went on a Tanner trip, remember the Tanner Project.
Yeah.
I went on a black college tour. And my first black college tour that I went to was in Atlanta to the AU Center. We went to Clark, Morris Brown, Spelman, Morehouse. And so me seeing like some of the same things that you saw, people, that look like us, all in the same place, getting along, supporting one another, and in the city, living like we didn't see people that look like us living in our city. Our city is not a college town. There's
Right.
a small college in the town now, but there wasn't one when we were growing up. So that's going to lead me into my next question for you. You earned your master's in public administration from San Francisco State University. You and my stepmother actually share that alma mater. She earned her bachelor's degree from there, and I think she got her doctorate degree from there as well. But that's a major accomplishment for you, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But let's talk about your undergraduate experience at Morris Brown. Morris Brown is one of the smaller HBCUs in the country, for those who don't know. Our Tanner Project, I just mentioned, we visited the AU Center back in '91. And at one point, Morris Brown, in the history of Morris Brown, if I'm not mistaken, it had lost some significant accreditation and lost some significant funding, and nearly left the school completely like defunct. To many of us who also attended HBCUs, Shamann, I know in conversation with other people who attended other HBCUs, Morris Brown is like a mystery. And so tell us about your experience there and what made you choose to go there and what's the status of the university today.
Well, I want to say, first of all, there is no other HBCU or, quite frankly, any institution that lost their accreditation for a 20-year period and got it back. So Morris Brown College is fully accredited after 20 years of losing our accreditation because we chose to keep certificated programs and other programs of higher education while we went through our reaccreditation process. Otherwise, we would have lost our accreditation. So big ups to the team that has worked so hard to make sure that we got our accreditation reinstated. Dr. James, our president, who's also one of my fraternity brothers. But the alumni, we have a very strong alumni at Morris Brown College that people I don't think really understand the resilience and the spirit of the folks who attended Morris Brown College. And folks stayed faithful. We continue to have homecomings. We continue to, I mean, I was there still every year, even during the time when we had lost our accreditation. But we believed, and folks put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Our chapter of the fraternity raised a lot of money every single year, and we still do. We have our golf tournament during homecoming every year. And so just happy that we're back. But in terms of being on campus and going to school at Morris Brown, it was an amazing experience for me. One, having all black professors that really showed interest in my success and provided me with opportunities that I didn't even know were going to exist even before I got into school. But just seeing so many people who it wasn't an anomaly for them to go to college. Most of the people I experienced and met down there, like they had parents who went to college. They had brothers and sisters who went to college. They had families who owned business. In some cases, none of them had ever worked for anybody who wasn't black. You know, those are not the experiences we get in California. And not to say that that's a bad thing, because I love our diversity in California. But for me, going to a HBCU definitely saved my life. I needed to be in that environment. I needed that experience with people who looked like me, loved on me, and had the skills and the ability to educate someone who was thirsty for knowledge, but also had never seen so many people that looked like me in the classroom. I think I had 2 black teachers my entire life. And I don't think people realize how important that is for somebody to be educated by people that look like them. Most certainly from a respect factor or an opportunity factor. I mean, if I'd have had more black male teachers, I probably wouldn't have got in as much trouble as I did in school, particularly at a younger age. But that experience is unmatched. To learn from people who obviously were at the highest level of academics, but who looked like me and had accomplished so much. And then not just being at Morris Brown College, being in the middle of the Atlanta University Center where you had Morris Brown College, Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta University, the Intertheological Center. So we just had so many campuses that were together. The academics part was amazing. The fun was amazing. Being around all my folks, and it was always something to do. Like every single day of the week, it was something to do, something fun to do, and some of the most beautiful women that you'll ever come across. And being able to be in school in that environment as a teenager, a late teenager, and then a young adult, there's no experience like it at all.
Yeah, yeah. I again still learning more about Morris Brown through you. Congratulations to the university and to everyone who put forth effort to reestablish university to prominence in the HBCU community. Um, and I appreciate your detailed account of your experience there. I imagine I went to TSU, and right up the street from TSU is Fisk University and Meharry Medical College, both HBCUs. Although medical college is pretty much just doctors, and they don't come out a whole lot. And then there's a college town, Vanderbilt University, is not far from TSU. There's several other smaller colleges in the town. Middle Tennessee State University is about 30 minutes away, which is the biggest, public university in the state of Tennessee. So, that I didn't have the same HBCU experience in terms of being in the AU center, and but I do understand having other colleges around. There's always something to do, so I understand that part, and I can only imagine how fun it was for always having something to do with people that look like you all the time. You don't have to really go far. I mean, you could walk really literally to each one of those campuses, and just walk right back to the dorm. So, like I can only imagine how much fun that was back then, man. Because I remember when I went, I applied to 3 schools. I applied to Southern, I applied to Clark, and I applied to TSU. I got accepted to Clark and I got accepted to TSU, but I decided to go to TSU. But when I hear stories about that, sometimes I'm like, man, what it would have been like if I went to Clark, even though TSU pride, I love Big Blue. I would not change that experience for anything in the world, just like you wouldn't change your experience at Morris Brown.
And plus, y'all got a pretty big campus. And to your point, there's so much other stuff to do and so many other campuses around similarly. Because we didn't just have the HBCUs too. We had other schools also that added to that college life experience.
Because you got Georgia Tech down there, University of Georgia.
University of Georgia, about 40 minutes away. But quiet as kept, I didn't get accepted to TSU because had I gotten accepted to TSU, I might have made that decision just to follow in Pop's footsteps. But what's for you is for you, and God knew that Morris Brown is where I needed to be.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, there is a reason I didn't get accepted to Clark. So, all right, man. What are some of your future goals for service and advocacy for the communities you represent? I was going to ask you that question, but you told me that your term is ending in 2027. Well, what are some of the things that you hope to accomplish in this next year and a half?
Well, I got some promises to fulfill. Still want to hit a certain level of affordable housing built in my district, and we're on track for that. Getting legislation that will fund some of the recommendations for reparations is something that I'm still going to continue to push. A lot of defense being played right now. Preserving and protecting some of our federal resources because of the administration that's in place right now. Protecting our DEI. The things that are happening with this administration around not caring that life has been inequitable for Black people and so many other populations, and then to completely erase the work that has happened is something that I got to continue to fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and make sure it's not completely erased from the work that we do here in San Francisco, because the administration is literally not providing resources or taking money away from municipalities that have DI programs. So maintaining as much of that as I can, protecting our sanctuary city policy, and making sure our immigrants aren't just under attack as they go about their day-to-day productive work, not only here in San Francisco, but quite frankly for the country as a whole. So just continue the equity fight and doing as much as I can to get policies on the books that preserve for long term these things that are a need for all of us.
Yeah, you again, I know that you will be missed when you leave that position, and I know you'll still continue to put up the fight. And I know that the people that are still there fighting with you for the next year and a half are proud to have you by their side. And I think that there might be some people who watch this podcast or this episode and might be inspired themselves to put forth such an effort in their communities when they see someone like you doing it. So man, just very powerful. I appreciate everything that you've done in your personal life to prepare yourself to be here, to be in this space, to be a strong representative of our people. I think that's very commendable, and I wouldn't expect anything less out of a man of your stature with the mentor that you had in Dr. Fillmore Graham, with the organization you're part of, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. So dope stuff, man. I got a couple more questions for you, Shamann, and then we're gonna end it. But before we go, this one is on a little lighter note. Back to another 100% Vallejo question. All right, I call this my playlist. Right, we're gonna take it back to the mid '90s, and you got a five slot disc changer in the back of your car. All right, you can only fill the slots with Vallejo-based artists. Who you listening to?
Mac Dre for sure. And this early '90s, I just want to make sure I know. So yeah, I'm gonna have.
Well, they could be from right now. They could be from any time. But you got 5 slots.
Mac Dre, 40, Mac Mall, Celly Cell, and probably Sugar Wolf.
And Sugar Wolf, shout out to them, man. That's a dope list, and it's a variety of people that I hear when I ask this question. I interviewed Noveen, I asked her this question. I interviewed Montre, I asked him this question, and a couple other people, and I get different responses.
And that's straight rap,
Huh?
because a lot of people don't know. That's straight rap, because a lot of people don't know Could Function, Club Nouveau, Sliding Family Stone.
Yeah.
Like that was just my straight rap.
Straight rap,
My
yeah.
straight rap.
Her, you could have included so many people, man, and new artists, older artists. I appreciate you, throwing some of those out. I just like, this question really is just to brag on our city a little bit. You know how we do.
For
It's not
sure.
just a popular collar question. It really is what it is.
Hey, you know it.
All right, one more question, man, and I'm gonna get you out of here, Shamann. This question, the last question, is called "What's Your Rush?" As in Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore has 5 iconic images or faces on it. So, I already know one of them. Yeah,
They got 4.
4. I said 5. The reason why I always say 4. And
Extra. I'll take extra. That makes life easier when you got an extra.
you got an extra one, yeah. I always say 4, but the last episode that I did earlier today, I recorded one, and they went to 5, and so that's probably what was on my mind when they went to 5. So it has 4 iconic images or faces on it. I know for a fact that you already mentioned one, but give me 4 people that have inspired you the most along your journey.
Well, obviously we're not including God because He is first and foremost. I have to say that so people know and understand that. Fillmore Graham, of course, is at the top of the list, the first person on my Mount Rushmore. My mother is definitely on there. And man, I mean, God, it's so many people. I mean, I probably would have to go with Ken Hendricks, who is older fraternity brother, a mentor, like a third or fourth father figure in my life. And I would have to say Cedric Spencer, who's one of my frat brothers, who I learned a lot about politics and how to be successful in politics, quite frankly, from my leadership roles in the fraternity. And he is one of the people that taught me how to succeed in leadership roles in the frat that were transferable to me being able to be successful and get elected. So Fillmore Graham, Moms, Ken Hendricks, and Cedric Spencer.
That's dope, man. That's shout out to each one of those individuals. Rest in peace to Dr. Fillmore Graham. I'm not sure if is your mom still living, Shamann?
Mom's is still with us for sure.
Yeah, good. I know Moms is making you proud to hear your son, to see your son do such amazing things, and to hear him put you on that Mount Rushmore as one of the individuals that inspire him to do great things. So keep being you, Mom. Keep doing your thing. And I thank you for delivering him into this world because he's making me proud as a brother.
That's right.
Shamann, man, I'm going to open up the floor to you, man. The floor is yours. I want to give you the opportunity to share with our audience anything that you like to share, whether it's about your podcast, comedy show, anything you got going on in the community, anything inspirational, you want to say. The floor is yours.
Well, definitely, again, Johnny, just want to thank you for the opportunity. Like you said, I do have the book. It's been out for the last couple of years. From Juvenile Hall to City Hall, your resume can change. You can go get it on Amazon. They got soft covers or a hard copy. And it's really just detailing my life from growing up as a teenager to making it to the Board of Supervisors. But there's a lot more that we have to share. So when the next book comes out, be ready for that. The podcast right now, first episode is on YouTube. Me and Black C from RBO Posse. You'll learn a lot of information just about him, the things he had to do and endure to become the artist that he has been, and the fact that he's been in the game for 30 plus years says a lot. And I just say the last thing, we won't continue to do comedy. We got one of our bigger shows coming up August 17th. It's a Sunday, and it's at the Journey Theater in Vacaville, California. August 8th, we here at the Senior Center in San Francisco, and August 9th on Brotherhood Way. So we got a lot of comedy shows on the way, and I will be at the Comic Store in Los Angeles on August 21st. So stay tuned, more information on that. But I'm just going to continue to work hard and do the things that I'm supposed to do in this next year and a half as a member of the Board of Supervisors. But we got a lot on our plate that we're excited about, and appreciate you giving me the opportunity to just share with the people.
Absolutely, Shamann. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for being here. Make sure you send me those links to your book and to
Yep.
your podcast, so I can put them down in the information below. If you're watching this information by the time this episode airs, the links will be down below, so you can find Shamann Walton's book, so you can have access to direct access to his podcast. Man, we gotta get you away. You got so much going on. We got to get you a ShamannWalton.com website, man. Put all the stuff you got going on.
When I get out of office, trust me, it's ready.
For sure, for sure. Well, this has been another episode of the Revisit Your Dreams podcast. Thank you again for being here. I want to remind you again, our episodes air Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for all my people out there on the West Coast. I'm your boy, Johnny King III, a.k.a. Still Chill Leroy. This has been Shamann Walton, a.k.a. Shamann Walton's 100% Real Podcast. Go ahead and check out that new episode with Black C. Shamann, thank you for being here, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of Revisit Your Dreams. Yeah.
Thank you.
Revisiting my dreams with the king.
Best by far.